So everyone, this is Bianca Cha-Camp. She's visiting us today to talk all kinds of things. She's got a wealth of knowledge. She's a mechanical engineer. She's a designer. She's all of the above and more. And Bianca, I mean, if you want to just start things off, giving us a little introduction about who you are, what you're all about.
Yeah, sure. So, like she said, my name is Bianca Cha-Camp. I'm from the DC area, and I went to Cornell University for my bachelor's and master's. I graduated with my master's in 2012, and then I moved out to Portland to start working for Intel, which was my first job. I was a process engineer in the fab. So, that job in particular was very much like kind of very traditional mechanical engineering. I owned water systems that supported fab cooling. Okay, that's as far as I'll get into that. And then I kind of made some decisions a couple of years later that that wasn't what I wanted to do, and ended up leaving Intel, moving back home with my parents, and explored a bunch of different things. Like I applied to go to different grad schools and um, was looking for different jobs. But in the meantime, I started working. I started working for a STEM education company, so teaching after schools and summers, doing like engineering, Lego robotics, any type of science activities with K through five, probably up to K through six students. And at the same time, I started working for a mechanical design startup and also had a bunch of part-time jobs. So I was living at home and kind of after having like a big job and like living on my own for a while, it was sort of really weird to go back. And at the time, it kind of felt like a setback. But what it ended up leading me to was leading me into jobs where I got to do more engineering design and human-centered design. And so I ended up actually coming back to Portland through Intel to work with their Smart Play group, which was like an awesome job because the purpose of that Smart Play group was to get Intel chips into STEM engineering, STEM education, products and toys for kids. So I worked with them for a little while until that division closed, and been basically contracting since then. But now my new position is with Oregon Mesa. And I don't know if any of you Oregon Mesa students at all or affiliated. Okay, so I see Tyler is, and there's a lot more
And
people
raise your
that I can
hand.
see. Okay, so Tyler, I'm assuming there are a couple more shy ones in there somewhere, but
Got at least two more.
yeah. So now I'm a program coordinator for Oregon Mesa. So I do recruitment and try to like get partnerships with different engineering professionals and firms to volunteer and do cool projects with the students. So yeah. Any questions about that, or Okay.
Maybe you could explain for the people who may not know, what exactly is Mesa?
Sure. So Mesa is the math, engineering, and science achievement program. And it started here in Oregon kind of out of the civil rights movement. There were a few different people in the community who wanted to make sure that students who weren't traditionally getting opportunities to pursue STEM were, and removing those barriers for those students. So they worked with Mesa USA which is based down in Arizona, I believe. I'm still new, so I don't know all the history, but they worked to get Mesa programs into school. So it's an after school program. Usually there's a chapter led by a teacher in either a middle school or a high school. And it runs throughout the year, and you'll be working on a project that's based on around some theme, and eventually you'll be able to come to Mesa Day, which happens in the spring, and present your project, and the winners get to go to Mesa Nationals as well.
So we've got a question in the chat from Michael, who says, you mentioned Fab a few times. What is Fab?
Okay, sorry. So I will explain what a Fab is. So Fab is basically the Intel word for factory. And it's short for fabrication. And so anytime someone's referring to a fab, they're probably coming out of Intel. Intel's fabs are set up sort of in like a 3-level structure. At the top is the main fab, or like the clean room, and that's where all the tool sets are, where they actually create the wafers. None of those wafers are actually touched by human hands. They're actually these like really cool robots that like once the wafer goes through whatever process on these machines, there are these like robots that come down and they use vacuum suction to move the wafers to like the next station or the next spot in the process, which is really cool. Those vacuums have to be running constantly, and I was actually in charge of the back rooms. Having the vacuum stop working is like a big no-no. So there's the clean room level where like there's chipset testing and testing on the wafers, and then below that are the 2 subfab levels, and in the subfab levels you have all of the different system products that contribute to making those chipsets above. So you provide water for cooling all the instruments up there. You provide like bulk gases. So I'm not familiar with all the different bulk gases, but like they have any of the electrical systems. So it's a huge factory in a sense. That's a good question though. They actually do yearly, and I'm not sure what the process is going to be now because we're in quarantine times, but yearly Intel holds like an open house day where people can go and do a fab tour. So I can find out what that date is, or if they've figured out any processes to keep doing that. So if anyone's interested, like look out for that.
Jerry recommends the Fab tour.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of our students right now, they're in high school, or a couple of them are transitioning into college. Could you talk about a little bit your process of transitioning out of high school into college? How'd you decide which college you want to go to? Did you know that you wanted to be a mechanical engineer, or was it like an aha moment?
Yeah, sure. That's so in high school, I was I think I was a pretty good student, pretty okay student. I liked my classes. I ended up taking being part of the IB program and doing some AP courses. So I actually had a pretty good record out of high school. When I was applying, my process for applying was pretty interesting. I don't know if any of you have been experiencing this, but have you been getting like letters from different colleges coming to your house? Like we had this big shopping bag full of letters that my dad and I sat down one day, and my dad thinks very highly of me. So like any school that wasn't like top tier, he'd just like throw in the no pile. I'm like, no, maybe they have a program that I'd like. But he was very discriminate about it. But what really helped me decide which college to go to was a few of the different universities I had reached out to see if I could do like a visitation weekend. So some I just like went to with friends. A bunch of us went on like a couple of road trips for what was in our area, and just going to the admissions office and say, hey, we're thinking about applying to the school. Can we get a tour? because you can do that. You can just go to the universities. A lot of schools have virtual tours now, so you guys can like just search their websites, search for virtual tours, and they'll be able to do that now. But Cornell specifically, because that's where I ended up going to school, they invited me to do a visitation weekend. So I actually stayed with a freshman, I stayed with a freshman student in their dorm for the weekend. So I got to shadow them and see, you know, where they went every day, went to some classes, and then they had special projects and things for us high school students to do while we were there. This program was specifically targeted towards, you know, underrepresented students as well. So there were people who like looked like me, all different types of backgrounds who were there. And, you know, I think it's pretty intimidating going to a university like Cornell where people have like a lot of money and not coming from money. So for us, that was cool to see other students who like lived pretty normal lives, didn't, you know, get a Porsche when they were 16 and things like that. So, but doing that experience really, really skewed my decision towards going to Cornell, just because like they made it really easy. The people were welcoming, and I got to meet some of the people in the some of the staff and some of the students. So, and then when it came to figuring out my what I wanted to study, it was actually really interesting. So I got into motorcycles and like motorcycle racing when I was a teenager. Not necessarily me, but like spectating. I don't know if any of you follow MotoGP, which is like the Formula One of motorcycle racing. But I got really into it, like followed all the racers, and some family friends actually organized like a trip to go to one of the races that actually came to the US. And what was really cool there was that if you went into the paddock, and the paddock is where all of the different teams like house the bikes, you got to see like all the engineers, because all of these racing teams have they have engineers working on the bikes. So these bikes that the racers ride are like pretty much things that are in development, right? You know, the race is an opportunity to like make improvements and figure out what works. And, you know, they may make a split-second change in order to like decrease weight on the bike. So then you can get, you know, make a turn in a split second faster, which at that level makes a huge difference. So seeing that, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Maybe I could get a job like that, because I had that interest. And so I ended up majoring in mechanical engineering. And even though I don't work with motorcycles, I kind of realized in the process that in the process of like going through my degree, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. Like, even though it was really cool when I was 15 and seeing them at the race and doing that, like it wasn't for me once I started going through school and, you know, taking a bunch of the different classes that were related to it. So, yeah.
Thank you. So besides technical and professional knowledge, what is one thing you learned in college that really stuck with you?
So one thing I really learned was actually just how to apply things. Because I realized going through school, like, you don't remember everything. You don't have time to remember every single thing. So looking how to recognizing problems and patterns within problems so that you can make decisions based on that, that really helps. And I think I also learned really well how to work with other people. I think I ended up being a lead on a project team and it wasn't because I had the most knowledge on the team. It was because I learned how to navigate, like, how do we do team structures? How do we get everyone's ideas heard, but then effectively accomplish our goal along the way? Those soft skills are really important when you're working with teams, which you will be as, an engineer if you choose to be, but other professions too. You need to be able to work with a team and depend on other people because they have valuable insight, they have a different perspective, and they can offer something valuable that maybe you or the other people on the team haven't thought of. So,
we do have another question in the chat from Sydney. Going back to talking about your college experience, you said that you didn't necessarily come from money like a lot of the student body at Cornell. So how did you make that happen for yourself, or do you have any tips for the students who may be in similar situations?
Oh yes, I have lots of tips, and basically they are do not do what I did. Because I didn't come from money, but my mom ended up actually going back to school when I was in high school. So she graduated as a dentist when, like 2 years before I went off to college. So when I applied to school and I was applying for federal aid, they take into account like your parental, your parents, like how much money they make. And because my mom was at that, like once she became a dentist, she was making this much money, they make a lot of decisions on like your aid packages based on how much your parents are make. But they don't take into account the fact that my mom had a bunch of student loans as well. She had other kids to take care of, and there's just so much of that. So when looking at colleges, I would highly suggest first having like a realistic conversation with your parents about like the finances of the family, because that will make a huge difference in the amount of aid that you'll be able to apply for. And so there's different types of aid that you can get. There's grants and there's student loans, right? So grants is, okay, we have this much money, and we'll put this money towards your education and you don't have to pay that back. Student loans, you do have to pay back. So for me, what ended up happening, because I went to Cornell, which is a very expensive school, I ended up having a lot more student loans than I expected, and really thought that I would get a lot more scholarships than I did. So my suggestion is that look very closely at the programs and be realistic about the aid, because even though you can come out of school with a degree, and that degree is supposed to make you a certain level of money, you don't have to go to the most expensive school or the most prestigious school in order to get the degree, because you coming out of a state school versus a private school, you can get the same job and the same pay as someone else, but you won't have as many student loans as they do. I would also say that because the world is becoming more connected via virtual programming, you can have the opportunity to take classes at some of the bigger schools if you wanted to. Another thing that I would say that one of my friends ended up doing, they ended up going to a community college, working their way through, transferring into the state school, and then because they didn't have many student loans going to their state school, and then they ended up getting into a PhD program at Cornell, and their PhD was paid for. Usually your PhD programs are sponsored. That's correct, right, Jerry? Yeah, okay, cool.
There's variations, but yes, that's how you should try to pick a PhD program.
Yeah. So I would say, do your research about the schools, how much they're going to cost. Do your research about like the entry level pay for the type of job you want to get as well. That makes a lot of difference, because someone can come out of school with a computer science degree making close to 80K with a bachelor's, but then there are some civil engineering positions where you only come out making maybe 50K. That's that 50 to 80K difference. That's a huge difference, especially after taxes. Yeah.
So you also talked about how you started off at your job at Intel, which I think a lot of us know what Intel is. It's a huge company. But now you've sort of transitioned into more of a design-based work for yourself. How did you make that transition? What were the things that pushed you to make that transition, and how do you still use maybe some of the mechanical engineering aspects that you've taken from school in your work now?
Sure. So I started that job at Intel, and I think I told you all before, Madison, that I ended up knowing that it wasn't for me and I didn't like it. And it wasn't necessarily because it was too technical. It had a lot to do with the workplace environment. It was a very like demanding job. I had a second cell phone that was just for work, and the cell phone was connected to my system, so any type of alarms were there. And I got calls in the middle of the night and had to come in on weekends and try to fix things when you don't necessarily have the expertise. And those things were fine, but then I don't think the Intel culture and necessarily was the best for me, because I didn't really feel supported and given the authority to do the job, even though I had a lot of responsibility. And that makes doing your job really hard. It makes it unenjoyable. And I think one of the things that looking back, you can be your own advocate. Just because you're the new person, just because you're the youngest member on the team, doesn't mean that you can't speak up for yourself. If you get into a job in a position at a company and it's not the best fit for you, there are options to move around. And even though what your boss or what your group might do is like try to keep you in your position, and you'll feel a lot of not really like direct pressure. No one will say, no, you can't leave the job, but there will be a lot of like, oh, well, it's going to take some time to replace you, and the hiring process is really hard. They'll do things like that to like guilt trip you into not moving somewhere else within the company. But that's not your problem. At the end of the day, that's their problem. You need to be in a place that is effective for you, because you're working there 40 plus hours a week. You should be able to feel like, at least you should feel at least that you are empowered to do your job and you have the support of your team to do those things. Yeah. So I ended up leaving because of that. And didn't really know what I wanted to do once I left. Like I said, I applied to a few different graduate programs, but I don't think a PhD was necessarily for me. And that's why I ended up moving back home, just to save money while I was trying to figure things out. And that's when I started working for the design startup and then working with kids. And those two jobs combined really gave me the impetus to start exploring engineering design more, because a lot of our projects with our students were very much like, let's design something, let's make something. And working with kids, especially like really, really little kids, they're such possibility thinkers. They don't limit themselves. And I think that's really important in the design process, is when you're coming up with ideas, is to think out of the box, and they're really good at that. So I thought, it would be really fun to design for kids, because they're excited about everything. They find amazement in the things that you just think are simple, So.
Could you give us an example of a design you may have worked on?
Yeah,
as we're
sure.
working on our own designs now.
Yeah, sure. So can I share my screen actually? Let me see. Screen share.
You should have it now.
Yeah. All right. Can everyone see this? Not this this thing. Okay. So I worked on this really cool thing when I came back to Intel as part of the SMART team. It is the Curie Band. And are any of you familiar with Project MC Squared? It was a show that was on Netflix. It was about teen girls, and they were, one of them was a spy, and they used like STEM to solve the day or save the day in these spy problems. So the Curie Band came out of a research group within Intel, and they were working on like a few different projects that were just like really creative, really fun. And at the same time, my group, which was the Smart Play group, they were looking for partners to turn some of those ideas into like an actual product that could be sold. But in the process, they developed a relationship with Project MC Squared. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's a video here about the Curie Band. And what you'll see my teammate, Deepika, and she was the one who started developing this band. Let me see. Going in here.
Project MC Square.
Can you all hear the audio?
Project MC Square. Project MC Square.
Hi, I'm Issa Penarejo, and I play Cameron Coyle.
Hi, I'm Janaea Waltz, and I play Brad and Bandwidth in the Netflix original series Project MC Squared. And today we're here with one of the engineers and creators of the Curie Band that we use on Season 3 of Project MC Squared.
When Cam and Bri auditioned to become the opening act of their favorite band, Elite, they wear these high-tech Curie bands that light up with movement and sync with music.
Now let's talk to one of the engineers of the Curie Bands.
Hi, I'm Deepika Jain, and I'm an innovation engineer at Intel Corporation.
So what are the Curie Bands?
These Intel Curie Bands are the smart wristbands that detects your speed and the position of your hand movement, how you're moving your hand, and based on that, it generates a light every time.
Are there more features that we can see?
Oh yeah. So apart from the interactive light pattern, they can create a music.
I was like, oh my goodness.
So for both of you.
It's like
So if it's on your wrist, so it basically detects your wrist movement. So if you like hit it like this, that's play one note. So if you rotate your wrist, hit down, that's a different note, and a different light too. So if you rotate your wrist, it detects in which position your wrist is, and based on that, you'll get a different note. So if you do like this, you'll get this color.
There it is.
Go slowly like this, you'll have both will have a pearl.
Pretty. Oh my god. This would be really cool at a concert. And then you saw the purple lights.
This little chip is the brain of the Curie Band. So all the tech behind the music, the gesture recognition, the Bluetooth connectivity and everything is inside the small chip. That's our Intel Curie module. I love music and I always wanted to like play a piano or a guitar, but that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, right.
Then I want to have an instrument that plays the music what I want, but it's like in a small form factor. So right now it's playing on the piano. I can map it to the guitar and play the guitar or the drum. I can play anything on that.
So for us, it took a lot of time and hard work to perfect our dance. Did it take a lot of hard work and time to create this wonderful Curie Band?
To make these bands, it took a lot of hard work and learning.
These are awesome. We love them.
Me too.
So I personally love science, but what type of science do you study?
I also love science, and I said, I want to do something interesting.
Yeah.
So I opted for computer science. And after I joined Intel, where I can use.
Okay, I'm just gonna end there because I don't think they talk about the Curie Band much after that. But basically, at that point in the process, those bands were very much a prototype. They actually didn't work as intended. So I don't know if any of you saw the show, but they basically had got the prototypes to work just for the process of filming. So doing a lot of like filming magic to make sure the lights came on at the right time. So my team ended up adopting the project in order to actually turn it into a product. So our mission was to, how do we turn this into a product that can be sold in stores with the Project MC Squared branding so that fans of the show could have one of these bands and use it in their day-to-day life. So I'm not going to show you guys this anymore so you can see me. So we ended up developing the bands, and it was a process of trying to make it out prior to the holiday season. So we started in, I believe, late April, taking that prototype and trying to turn it into a product. So we were going to market it as an activity band for kids ages 7 through 12. And basically it would be a band with an accompanying app that could be downloaded onto a tablet or a smartphone. So the band itself has this piece here, which I'm charging, and hopefully it's charged enough, which has the pod and the PCB or the board that Deepika showed in the video, and that was like a way earlier version. This one is a lot smaller and different than the one she had now. But you see it's lighting up. I don't know if you guys see it lighting up because it's kind of light in this room. But basically, the technology that this has in there, it has a gyroscope and accelerometer, which is the same thing that you have in your cell phone to make sure that your screen orients itself correctly. So we use the accelerometer and gyroscope data to know where the position of the band is when it's on your arm. And then based on some pre-programmed movements, the lights will you can kind of see it, the lights will display a different pattern. So we put in 5 pre-programmed movements. There was a circle, which I don't know if you guys can see the orange lights happening. There's this, you can smack your hand like this. We implemented a record scratch, and those were pre-programmed. The second phase was attempting to make a product that you can program your own movements in, and you can change the lights or whatever display color and pattern that you wanted. So it was a period of months where we were trying to do phase 1, which was pre-programmed, the pre-programmed movements with pre-programmed light outputs. And the intention was to release that in a kit for kids. And once they downloaded the app, or their parents downloaded the app, they would be able to change the light patterns if they wanted to. And then through an over-the-air update, we would release the ability for the band, for users to pre-program their own movements. So like the girls in the show, you could choreograph your own dance and have the light output whatever colors that you wanted to. So for this project, I ended up doing some design, design early on. So that included doing computer-aided design in the computer to make sure that there was a plastic covering for your PCB, right? Because you didn't want it to. So I did a lot of materials analysis to make sure that the lights could actually be seen through this pod as well as through this band, because we have these LED. I don't want to crack it open, but let me see if I can show you guys some pictures. Share my screen again. Let me see. Oh, this isn't actually a picture, it's a video. But you guys can see here that the lights are shining through and flashing through. So I had to do some analysis to figure out, okay, are these lights actually going to shine through this material, like while they're on the board? Also figuring out, what was the rate at which the light should be flashing. So we did a lot of testing, in-house testing, and we also did a lot of user studies with kids. So we ended up reaching out to different Intel employee networks to invite their kids to come in after school, and I ended up doing a user experience study with them where they got to use the bands, try to do the pre-programmed movements, and see if, ask them about the fun factor, ask them about the ease of use. We ended up running through a series of tests with them about how to turn on the product, how to charge it, how to use the app, and how to use Bluetooth in order to connect the band to the app through Bluetooth. So we went through all of those processes to make sure that it actually worked for the intended age group. One of the things that I encountered, because I was leading the user study, I'm going to show you guys what the app was intended to look like. Well, my computer's being kind of slow, so it's not trying to open anything up right now. Okay. Let me just take a minute. Try to see why this isn't working.
Maybe while you're sort of hashing out some technical difficulties, there's a couple of questions in the chat sort of regarding the concept of group work and the fact that you definitely worked on a team to make this project happen. And we're working currently in teams on our own design projects. So maybe is there a little bit of advice that you could give us as you're working in teams, or how did you make it work for yourself in this case?
Sure. So what was great about our team, our team was pretty small, and you know, everyone was very excited about the project for one. So that really helps. Like when everyone's on the same, like has the same level of excitement, and you know, being a part, everyone wants to be a part, and everyone wants to help. That's great. So there's some times where people are a little less excited than you, and that's okay, because you know, people have varying levels of excitement. But always checking back in with them to see if there's anything that you can do to help. Sometimes when you know you're not getting the right vibe from somebody, it probably has nothing to do with like what's going on in your team, or what's happening in the group. They may just have some personal things going on. So never take anything personally. I think that's important when you're working on a team, especially for work. I think what really helped from the beginning was making sure that we had a product requirements document. That's where you identify what the product needs are, what the problem you're trying to solve is. So anytime throughout your process, anytime you're doing a design review or reviewing a sprint, you can go back, and if there are any arguments between the team or differences of opinion, go back to the product requirements document and make sure that you're always connected to what the problem is that you're trying to solve. You're trying to solve a problem, and most likely it's a people problem. So if you end up being in a position where that initial problem isn't being solved, then always circle back to that, because that can help your entire team reset. And I'll give you an example with this band specifically. So one of the pre-programmed movements for this band was to make a circle in the air. And you guys would think that making a circle is very easy, but you guys know that if you try to draw a circle freehand, it's actually pretty hard to get a perfect circle. Most likely you'll draw an ellipse. And for kids, especially kids who are in elementary school, making a perfect circle in the air is not possible. So a lot of the kids who came in for the user studies couldn't get that circle movement to display the light output. And when that happens, the kid ends up thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me. This is really hard. I don't get it. And eventually they're not going to want to use the product because it's too difficult for them. So, you know, went back to the team, told them, hey, you know, we probably need to reduce the limits of the accuracy on what constitutes a circle when people are drawing a circle in the air in the algorithm for your band, right? And one of the responses that I got back from the engineer was, oh, just teach them how to make a better circle. Like, no, that's not the point, because I myself will not be coming with the band in the box to teach them a perfect circle. That's not the point of this. The point isn't to create the most, like, you know, sophisticated engineering product ever. You're creating a product for kids, and if you're making it for kids, the first priority is fun over making things fancy. So we ended up circling back. You know, our end user is the kid, and it has to be if more than 50% of the kids are saying that they're not able to use it this way, then you need to go back to the drawing board and you need to make the changes so that your end user is actually able to use your product. Let's see. Any other questions? I know I'm while I'm trying to figure out how to get back to this album, these pictures.
I have a question if there are no student questions.
Sure.
So the product that you're making is through Intel, like, or?
So it was branded through Intel and Project MC Squared. So what I will say about this product, unfortunately, is that it did not make it to stores. Those reasons were beyond me. It was an executive decision that happened very late in the game. It's pretty like upsetting considering the amount of work that got done. But it was something that was marketed. Obviously, you had the actresses on the show do this, what do you call it? This dance with them, and do the interview with Deepika. Yeah, so it didn't make it to stores. It was,
okay, well,
it's not as fun.
That I was actually going to ask a different question, but you brought up something that I think might be interesting for all of us to hear as inventors. So you just said that you made a product and it didn't make it to the shelves. Like, how do you deal with all of that momentum, right? Like you're building this thing and it's about to be out there, but then something happens and now you have to kind of call it quits on the project. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it was you know what, it sucked, honestly. Like it wasn't the best feeling, right? Especially for the entire team, because it was something we'd worked on, and it was, it wasn't just Intel, it was Intel and the makers of Project MC Squared. So the decision making that happened wasn't necessarily in the hands of the development team. And so I had to reckon with the fact that, like, even though it didn't make it to the stores, it's still a viable product. It really, it's something that I have on my portfolio because it's an amazing product, and the amount of work that went into when I talk about my experience, if I've gone into interviews, I talk about this product because this happens in companies all the time. There are so many different company products that actually don't make it to the public. They don't make it out the door. And it has a lot to do with, what is most viable for the company at the time. There are a lot of pieces that go into what you actually see. Yeah. So does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah. It was kind of like, how do you?
But I will say, for me, for a long time I thought it was like it was a failure, it was a defeated thing, but I ended up getting my next job because I talked about this band and I talked about this product, and they were very impressed. They were impressed with, the process. They're impressed with my role in it, so don't take those things as defeat. Take it as this was an experience, and it was a fun experience. I got to learn a lot of things. I got to work with some great people, made some great relationships. I actually went to LA and went to one of the premieres with Netflix, in order to talk to the people about this product. So there are a lot of cool things that came out of it. So even though the product itself did not make it to the stores, the work that I put in paid off.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to stop our conversation, but I want to be mindful of the time and the time that we agreed ahead of time. So I don't want to eat into your calendar for the rest of the day. Um, any other? We could talk all day. Is there anything we should have asked you about? Because there's like a lot of things. There's a lot of things. Anything you want to tell us before you have to go?
Yeah, I don't, well, I still have time, so I can stay probably until about 2:30 if anyone had more questions. But I remember when we talked earlier this week, Jerry, that one of the things that I will say is that I didn't know what I was doing half of the time. I was stumbling through. I had a lot of moments where I felt like a failure, and I felt like I didn't didn't necessarily have the motivation, didn't know if I was the right person for the job, felt a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't know if you guys have talked about that, but that's when you feel like, you don't belong here for some reason or another. But what you have to realize about that is that a lot of people, like, they fake it until they make it. Not everyone knows what they're doing. And even if there are people who are in the room who are smarter than you, have more experience, you still have something to offer. You have a unique perspective. And a lot of the teams, a lot of the products that you see that are a success in today's market have to do with the fact that you have people on those teams who have different mindsets and different things to offer in those teams. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you guys really know too much about like some of the bigger companies or inventions today, but like the people who are the face of those companies, they often aren't the people who have developed the products either. Case in point, the Steve Jobs is the base, the brain behind Apple, and yet a lot of people don't know about Steve Wozniak, who is actually the technical mind. So all that to say is that regardless of whether you feel like you should be in the room, you should be in the room. You matter. And you're going to gain experience, and you're going to make mistakes too. And that's okay, because mistakes are things that you should learn from, right? I think it was Albert Einstein that said that failure is just the next step to figuring out the solution. So you've exhausted one possible solution. Now you move on to the next one. So, and that same thing applies to what you plan to do with your life. I think another thing we talked about too was about you guys are in high school now, and some of you are going off to college, and you're thinking about what you're going to major in, and I'll say two things about that. Is that there may be some expectations. You may have teachers, you may have parents, older siblings, people who want you to study something or to be something. And I would say that doesn't matter. You should be and do what you want to do. And because you're going to have to live that life as well. So if you want to be an engineer, be an engineer. But if you want to be an artist, be an artist. But in either of those things, put in the work and, dedicate your time to it. If that's what you want to do, you can do those things, but as long as you put in the work, and don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, and don't tell yourself that you can't do it. That's important. Yeah. Is anyone any other questions? All you guys are so quiet.
It's a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. Do they, I don't know,
So the real
who's going off to college?
Hand raising.
Hand raising. Tyler, let's see, I just saw a couple hands raised, but I don't see your names anymore.
Kyle, I think Kyle is the only one starting this fall.
Yeah.
Way to go, Kyle.
Cool. Do you all know what you're going to major in? Okay. Kind of. Yeah.
So there's this is the first time we've tried a camp with so much hands-on activity virtually. And so we are very much inventing it as we go. And one of the things I've learned is that the real magic here happens in the breakout rooms with the mentors. And it's really good. The loss is that the breakout rooms are so absolute. There is no bleeding over. It's not like you're sitting at a table and you hear some really great idea at the next table over and it infects your group, and that, creates more cross-pollination. So we all meet in this big room and there's silence. And then we go to the breakout rooms and there's like buzz of activity, and then it's silence again. And we have to invent. I'm waiting for a team to invent the solution to that.
Yeah, I think the breakout rooms have been pretty cool for what we've done at work, especially if you like having different brainstorming sessions and then coming back, and each group shares the best ideas that come out of those sessions. I like that for like the ideation part of the design process.
Well, I'm going to risk being a little rude and say that we need to close our week, which ends at 2:30 today as well. I hope that you can maybe come on back and see the finale, or at least if you ever get a curiosity about what happens in a breakout room, come on back and join us. What you said, maybe 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago about project requirements. And so we had a conversation about that, and I was sort of I was embarrassed. So I'm supposed to know about this and teach about this, and I do in my engineering classes, but I skipped over it. And because you asked me that question, I brought it back to the group. So we've done engineering our requirements now.
That's cool. That's good. I didn't mean to call you out, Jerry.
Oh, no. But that's what good team members do, is they ask questions that are in, that you either don't think are important or they're in your peripheral vision. And it's really important to be receptive to that. So I did feel a little like embarrassed. It's like, but then it was like, yeah, that's such a really good idea. So I'm glad you reinforced it. So.
Yeah, and documentation, I always think documentation is a good idea, but sometimes just like in the process of doing things and actually doing the work, it gets, to the wayside. So at least with like doing a requirements document in the beginning, like that's the one thing that, I think I always try to do, because I know that along the way, all other documentation is lost and, doesn't get done. So it's cool. And I'd love to come back and join like any of the sessions and seeing like the final projects as well.
Well,
I will invite you to the finale, Bianca, so you can join us.
And I'll put this out to the camp. We're having visitors from Lemelson on Monday, and a couple groups said, hey, we'd like to talk to the visitors. So I'll put this out to the whole camp. If any group wants to talk to Bianca, we can, maybe if we can wedge a little slot into her schedule, you could join a particular group. So I'll put that out there and see if any of the design groups want to get some another chance to chat with you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to do that. So if any of you guys, want me to join the team and I'd be happy to come in and just see what you're doing. I don't have to like give my input or anything. If you want my input, I'll give it. But like if you just want me to see it, that's cool too.
Yep. Well, thank you. I hope you have a great weekend. It looks like there's some Oregon sunshine outside, so that's a good sign. And I really look forward. I'm really thrilled that you're part of the Mesa team officially. And I look forward to working with you in the future on all sorts of projects. This will be really good. Really glad you're on my team now, our team.
Yes. Same. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Madison, Noemi, Kavi.
Thank you for joining us, Bianca. It was great to talk
so
to an engineer. Very exciting. Thanks for sharing your cool projects with us.
Yeah.
Right.
We've had a little talk about accelerometers, but it was also really nice to see it at the product level. So it's really good.
Cool. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye. Have a good weekend.